Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. You know, our guest today is author and activist Sandy Stream. In her latest book, Sandy invites readers to muster the courage to face their past and to step into the life that they were meant to live. Sandy Stream's work is built on the belief that everyone deserves and everyone is capable of finding peace and strength within themselves. After teaching law for 20 years, raising 2 children, and facing a life full of adversities and lessons, she decided to turn her efforts toward facilitating workshops for young and experienced adults to encourage them to live in peace and power. Today we catch up with Sandy as she asks the question of all of us. Are you ready to stand up for yourselves, or are you ready to follow you? Let's bring on our special guest, Sandy Stream. Welcome to the next chapter with Charlie.
Hi, Charlie. Very nice to be here.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to our discussion. You have some very interesting ideas. And you know what I was thinking, Sandy, is to begin the show, let's delve right into the topic. You know, we could do nice chat banter about our life, the universe, and everything, but I think we're just going to jump right into it. And I'd like to have a brief discussion on 3 topics that I find are very important to you. You have a passion for peace, a passion for self-understanding, and a passion for discovering the courage to be your most genuine self. I love these 3 ideas. Do you feel like they represent you well?
Certainly a part of, important part of what I've been focusing on.
So you know what I'd like to do, since we're talking about peace, self-understanding, and discovering courage to be your most inner self, or most genuine self. I want to talk about integration of those, but first, I think it's important. You know, I find a very lacking word in our sort of mission-oriented, purpose-driven life is that we neglect the concept of peace. And I think it is such a common need for people. We want, you know, not just peace in wars, but we want peace in our life. We don't want so much turmoil, so much distraction. We want to be comfortable. And those are sort of my takes on peace. But before we go any further, I would really like to know what your view on peace means. How do you define peace? What is peace to you?
Oh, thanks, Charlie. I love that question. You're the first host who's asked it, and I guess such a deep question. And I think at first people's inclination is to think of peace like, you know, I want peace in the world, or I want the world outside me to be peaceful somehow. And I don't really live this way or see peace this way. You know, the first place that we need to look for peace is in ourselves, meaning to recognize that we are not living in peace typically. So most people do not live peacefully in themselves, right there.
And what do you say brings that about? You know? Why do we not live with peace within ourselves? What are our obstacles?
I mean, I can think of many, but the first ones that come to my mind is, you know, we typically don't follow ourselves. So we're always looking outside ourselves for what to do, you know, how to act, what to think, what to choose, how to be. And so it often goes contrary to what internally we feel we should do. We're not really looking deeply there. We're really busy trying to have other people approve of us, and therefore we end up maybe behaving or making choices that are against ourselves or against what we would do if we were looking purely internally. You know, it's okay to, you know, take advice or ideas from others, but at the end of the day, to make our choices from an inner space that feels right for us. And so I think that's one major disturber.
You know, and let's continue with that, because that's right in your second, you know, thing is that peace begins in with some sort of coherence between your inner self and your outer self. But that requires the second point that we talked about. That requires a healthy or significant degree of self-understanding, does it not? How can you be at peace with yourself if you don't understand yourself and have taken the time to investigate that?
Sure, absolutely. Like, let's say a simple example. Let's say I feel really angry today, right? So if I just feel angry and I just, judge myself or criticize myself as opposed to understanding myself, two different, totally different paths, right? One would be like, oh, I shouldn't be angry. It's not their fault. They didn't mean it, or okay, whatever. Like, many kind of thoughts that would go in there. And another path might be to understand, like, I wonder with curiosity, why am I so upset about this? Like, really the truth, like, why does it bother me so much? And to look deeply at the reasons, and we might find many reasons. Maybe, there's old pain we didn't process. Maybe we're not angry, we're actually hurt. Maybe somebody, we need to set some boundaries, we feel disrespected. So depending on what we would find inside, we might make a different choice as opposed to dismissing ourselves or criticizing ourselves, which is not so surprising because it's such a common behavior between each other. So we think this is all normal to do between individuals and to ourselves, where in fact I don't find that normal at all.
Yeah, and it's an obstacle. It's debilitating because it sounds to me, and I really concur, if we're not careful, our self-understanding is based not on our core of who we are, what we are like, our unique, our distinctives. It is often based on others' opinion, what others think of us, what others have told us we need to do, and we buy into their concept of our reality rather than delving deeply into what do I want to be like, even if it's not in line with what others are expecting of me. What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I like to talk about it in our circles because I facilitate courage circles. But there seems to be this point system in our world. I don't know what it is or who invented it exactly, but some kind of point. So if you have a certain degree, you get certain points. If you look a certain way, you get certain points. Or, and everyone seems to buy into this idea of points. But it doesn't really make sense, right? So what if, you were depressed for 3 years and then you managed to take a shower that day? Do you get points for that? And what if you helped your neighbor? Like, do I get points? How does this point system work anyways? It's quite bizarre. And so if you buy into that, then you kind of spend your life trying to accumulate points to be able to feel like you've achieved something decent or good enough or, something like that in our world. So that's one way. And another way, the way I feel I live now, is not based on the point system. It's based on looking inside deeply and realizing that, we're fine already. Like, we're good already. There's no points to accumulate in order to feel okay, because the truth is internally we're good natured. And so there's nothing to really prove if you already feel that about yourself by spending time with yourself. And if you feel that, then you don't do actions anymore trying to get points. You do actions or choices or non-actions based on what you feel you should do, as opposed to how to get these points so that people can, somehow value you or, something like that. So it's, to me, two completely different ways of living. Your choices will be completely different.
I have a guest that's on not quite monthly, probably every 2 months, my friend Terry Hershey, who is author of 20 books and speaker and landscape architect. And he's very strong on the negative influence of keeping score and keeping tally, but it's always by someone else's determination on what the scorecard says. It has nothing to do or little to do with me, and that I just may not fit the boundaries or the rules of what somebody else may put on me. As a matter of fact, I've discovered, because I am sort of an iconoclast, very little of what people expect of me is what drives me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic example of giving away all your power, basically. And I know the word power is used so much these days in so many ways that I don't really relate to. But if we think of, power in the way that I'll describe it, right? So let's say...
Yeah, describe power, please.
I mean, there's many aspects to it, but let's say, was it Paul that is your host with you?
He's
Charlie?
a producer. He's
Producer,
doing
right.
he's doing
So
the
let's
machinery.
say-
He doesn't enter the
perfect.
dialogue.
So
But
Yeah. So I just, have his name still on my mind. So let's say, for an example, I now decide that Charlie and Paul are going to be the two people in my life who are going to decide what I do, if it's okay or not, if I'm a good person, whether I should decide this or not, whether my mistakes are, shameful, all this kind of thing.
oh my goodness, Sandy, I decline the role. I do not want responsibility to do that.
I'm not giving it to you.
I know. I'm teasing.
Yeah. But so you get it, obviously. But that's what we do, right? We give that to other people, and it's a very, I would say, simple, but it's not so simple, obviously, for many to arrive to that point. But it's actually simple to take that power back, the power of approving yourself, validating yourself, comforting yourself, loving yourself, having compassion for yourself, and not give away and let other people, make all that choice. So in this way, we take back the ability to make our choices from a deeper place, right? Because we haven't handed over.
Where do we find the strength to do that? Because we are taught in our educational system and through parenting and through much of life, we're taught that the opinions of other people, experts that we need to go to, whether they be instructors or coaches or mentors or teachers, that we are taught to rely on their expertise rather than to say, we don't rely on that. We consider that as an option in my personality and in who I am, rather than saying this is a must do, this is a potential I might do if it fits who I am.
Yeah. How to find the courage. I mean, first you even have to know this possibility exists, right? So I think most of the time, myself included, we literally walk around with no information or messaging that's opposing. Like we're just bombarded with information telling us that, be nice to others and not, considering to be kind to ourselves deeply, right? Just please others, get points for others, do this, whatever. This one is, always everything looking outside yourself. And a lot of people don't even encounter any information telling you the opposite or, trust yourself, for example. How many of us, would tell something to a friend or a colleague or a parent, say, I'm really thinking that I'd like to go to whatever or visit this. And they'd be like, oh, great, good luck. Or just, with no comments, no criticism, no advising, no challenge, just like, oh yeah, if you feel like that's good for you, like give it a shot, good stuff, just trust yourself if you feel that, or you think you should try this kind of thing or whatever, right? We don't get that messaging very much to trust our inner guidance system. So it's hard.
How do we access that? Because I'm so into sort of the internal gyroscope, your internal, but this is something, we have to teach ourselves, and there are certain, mystical writings and good writings of people that help us, that can guide us, don't tell us what to believe, but tell us a process of discovering what you value internally. What do you suggest? What have you found helpful in better understanding what I want and not what my parent or some teacher has told me that I want? What?
Well, the first, and it took me years to do it. It was not overnight. Is to stop demonizing our emotions. So that's a very big one, because if we demonize our emotions, that means every time we feel something, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel whatever I feel, we're now like going to try to run away from it. We might get into our head and get into overthinking, or we might escape or avoid feelings by, millions of behaviors. It could be, drinking, but it can also be over-exercising, overworking, a million ways that people avoid feeling, right? Of feeling their emotions. And so I would say the first thing is to start to feel your emotions. So if you're, thinking a lot, just say like, what do I actually feel? And we've been really kind of cut off from our bodies. Like I use the word decorporated in the book. It's not really used in the English language, but I find it perfect. I Googled it and it's like barely been ever used, but it makes perfect sense.
What does it mean?
We've been cut off from the body, like decorporated.
Oh, yes.
So we're not in touch with what, our emotions are in our body, and we're not in touch because we're often in the mind. So to start to learn to go into the body and think, okay, what am I actually feeling? And that ideally would have started from young, right? With parents that would say, oh, you feel sad. Okay. And naming things and allowing you to feel and allowing you to process. But it's not common. Usually we want to fix your emotions really fast, and they're not really allowed, or they're judged, or they're shamed, or, many things. And so when you start to feel your emotions, well, then you start to understand and you dig deeper. Maybe you solve some traumas on the way and process all kinds of things. And then with time and of doing that, then, maybe now you've cleared a lot of maybe old emotions that were not dealt with. For, maybe you didn't have the space or the know-how or the willingness to go towards your pain and your difficulties, but eventually they pass, right? Because it's like energy. Once you feel it, it tends to just process. And so what you're left with, if you now have developed the habit of going in the body, whether it's towards your emotions, towards your breath, and meditation, or doing other things like that, is now you become a person that feels, right? So we're not just feeling emotions, we can feel ourselves. It sounds weird to say that, I guess, but
no, it sounds. It really. You're right on. I completely agree.
So then now, if you sit down and you're like, you sit on the floor and say, I don't know, what should I do? Should I do this or should I do that? And you can listen internally and say, okay, I really feel I should do this. And you listen to that, but now you can listen and feel, what your insides kind of talk to you or tell you, and where that comes from. That's maybe a discussion for another day. How do we get those, messages internally? Where does that come from ultimately? But I do think we have a sense of what's good for us or what we gravitate to. And so if you keep listening to that, you might feel like, I should stay away from this person. They're really, it's not good for me. It's toxic right now. Or this job is really not right for me right now, right? It's not even an objective, rational thing that others might say, it is a good job, it's not a good job. No, for me, it doesn't feel right for me right now, right? So the more you respect and listen to those, gut feelings, heart feelings, whatever you want to call them, I guess you end up moving in the right direction for you.
Yeah.
Not for Charlie, it's not for Paul, it's for you,
Yes.
Every person is 100% different. Yeah.
I was reading yesterday in spiritual readings, and I came across a reading that I've never come across before that I think is applicable to what you're saying. And that is, I don't have the title of the book right, but the title is something like How to Heal from the Hurts That Have Been Caused by Other People to You. So, how to heal from outside hurts, but he focuses on, but better, we need to heal from the hurts that we instigate, that we start. There are several hurts. We're not victims. I mean, in a large sense, that's a deep conversation. But that I don't view us as much victims as we make choices that are not always, they're in our best interest at the moment, but they're not the best interest in the long range. And this is what the spiritual writer, in our acts that are not consistent with what we believe, we need to, since this was spiritual writing, they were talking sin, and they said sin, but those are, just broken, not consistent with the way we're created actions. And the author suggested this: we need to trample those under the stirring fervor of love, and we need to allow ourselves to enter the cloud of forgetting. And that is just, we want to remember our deeds that we're not proud of, and we want to haunt ourselves with them, flagellate ourselves with them, on and on and on. And the author says, no, it is love. When you can trample those with love. You can't trample them with thoughts, you trample them with love, and you move to a next phase of forgetting, letting it go. It doesn't, we've learned our lesson from it, let's move on. I like that, of trampling with a fervent stirring of love and the art of the cloud of forgetting. Does that resonate with you in any way?
I guess it's a part of my picture. I mean, what I came to feel is that, most people are looking for unconditional love, right? And again, looking on the outside for it. You want someone to love you unconditionally. And, even parents, as far as I've seen, don't typically, from what I've seen, love their kids unconditionally. Unconditionally means unconditionally, no conditions. Whether you get this job, that job, you do this way, that way, you have the full love from the parent. Doesn't mean they agree with what you do, but
right.
The love is steady, right? The love is steady regardless of what you do. Even if they choose not to talk to you, they could still love you, right? So love is unconditional in that way, and it's not something we see regularly, but I think it's something absolute that we can get from ourselves or in ourselves, whatever word, makes more sense to you. And so, if there are mistakes you've made, if you are loving towards yourself, then you would, you can call it forgiving or letting go or understanding or, why you did that. And, I've had to do that myself, of course, for my range of mistakes, as everybody else has done. But if you understand yourself deeply, then you wouldn't be hard on yourself. But again, we're not really taught to understand ourselves or be kind to ourselves. We're always taught, be nice to this one and be nice to that one, right? And ignore yourself and abandon yourself for the sake of, appearances or for the sake of whatever else, we're taught to typically do things for.
Yeah, and we're often taught that we're not meeting the mark, are we? Somehow we have a deficit and there's something wrong with us. And so we just don't and we'll get on to courage, but that's got to be a major roadblock in courage. If I don't have confidence and faith in myself and belief in myself, and you know what I want to do right from there? I want to go to a quote of yours that I was very much struck by, Sandy. And that is, I so agree with you when you write that you can't really have a lasting impact on others until you fully accept who you are. That's profound, Sandy. That's a big quote.
Yeah, I think so, because even if you do things for others, like, again, it's all about how or why you're doing things, right? So a lot of times we might spend a lot of energy trying to help people and, do things for people. But if we would dig a little bit deeper, the real reason we're doing it is to feel good about ourselves, because we don't feel good, right? Why do we need to do something in order to feel good about ourselves, right? So it's almost can become an addiction, right? To help and help and help so that I feel, okay, I'm good enough now. I've done things. I do things for people. I'm a good person, right? So that's one way of operating, which is not, the actions are not, we might not even see what the person really needs because we might be so busy trying to help to fulfill this own deep need, to feel good about ourselves. Perhaps because our whole life, everyone is telling us we're not good in one way or another. That's what I witnessed, that the constant messaging is, you're not good enough, you should do this, you should do that, that's not good, this, it's just all over the place. And so the other way of operating, and for me, it's not the other way, but it's the truth. But I mean, everyone needs to discover the truth for themselves. I can't preach it. Everyone has to figure that out if they do. But for me, what I discovered as a truth is that deeply I feel in myself, and I actually feel it about others as well, is that deeply they're already good. And so you don't need to do or perform anything to get that feeling. You can just sit on the floor and do nothing. And you're good, And if you arrive at that feeling, then it doesn't mean you're going to do nothing. It just means what you do is not in order to fulfill that need.
Yeah, it's not filling the small ego. It's not filling that.
Yeah, you're already full. Yeah, you're full. And so now you can spill over,
Yeah. You know what I want to do is I want to pursue this. I'm sure you have some tools, and I think our listeners would really benefit by some practical steps of, and I have several myself because I've been doing this, Sandy. I've been doing this for 2 or 3 decades of writing personal mission statements and critiquing them and modifying them. And so thinking about my inner core has been an important part of my life, but I don't know that that's very common. And I want to talk about some easy ways for our listeners to access and understand what their true self is and what that false self in pleasing others is. So what I want to do is I want to take a brief break, and then we'll come back and we'll get right on that question. Is that okay?
Sure.
Perfect. Hi there, you're listening to The Next Chapter with Charlie Hedges, and my special guest, Sandy Stream, has written a wonderful book that is titled Sandy, where am I missing your book? I'm looking for the title, and it's The Courage
Circle.
The Courage Circle, and we're going to talk about the Courage Circle. But we said, because we were talking about you can't really serve others until you are more complete in yourself and understanding yourself. And we have so much incoming data and so many people telling us what we need to do rather than how we need to explore and understand what is my genuine self, what is my authentic, true me, that I need to stay true to that core. And when I'm true to that core, I am going to live in a word that we used early in the podcast. I'm going to live in peace. Tell me, do you have some tools that people might use to access that?
Yeah, I mean, the first, as I talked about, is not demonizing your emotions and actually going towards them. So that's a difficult one for people to do because we tend to avoid pain, right, instead of going towards pain. So why am I upset? Why do I have pain? Why am I whatever? Many people might do avoiding strategies instead of looking at them and feeling them. So that's tough. And
because I'm inadequate somehow.
Well, it's just hard, right? It's hard to feel the pain of, maybe you were rejected as a child, maybe you weren't loved, maybe this, maybe that, whatever. I mean, it's hard to go there without, knowing or having had the guidance to know that if you go there, it actually will be released and healed, right? It's like on the path. So pain will be on the path. And so, that's one thing just to always keep in mind that pain is not a negative thing. It's part of, on the path towards getting better.
That's a great insight. I like that.
yeah, and then we have to do, this reversal of so much teaching that's been maybe bombarded in us in order to choose differently. So one, as I spoke about, putting in the hands of other people the power to reject us or approve of us or all these things. So, taking that back, that will be a big step towards removing all those, thoughts that will twirl in the head and guide us maybe in the wrong direction. Learning also, to be kind to ourselves. And again, for me, it's almost like you need to redefine that word. So the whole life you've been using the word be nice. Be nice, be nice to whatever. And it's not necessarily nice, actually. Specifically, if it goes against you, then it's not nice, right? So how are you excluded from the equation of nice? So you almost have to relearn the word kind to make sure you're in it or you're part of that equation. And it's certainly not kind to go against yourself or to hurt yourself or sabotage yourself or ignore yourself or abandon yourself or criticize yourself or all those words or be hard on yourself. That is not kind. So you have to almost redefine that word and practice, to be kinder towards yourself first. Forget everybody else for the moment. We start with ourselves.
But this has to be a dedicated. It doesn't have to consume your life if that's all you're thinking about. But you must. I'm very strong in believing in the sort of the silence contemplative attitude where we're really thinking about life, the universe, and everything, and about ourselves and how we can live a life that is meaningful, enjoyable, and of tremendous service to other people. I found for me that I, as I contemplate it, what I used to do? I don't do it anymore now that maybe for the last 4 years, although I go to the Abbey once a month, and so I'm always, to a monastery once a month, and so I'm always writing there. But I find that if I need, not everybody is journalers. I need to write it down and rehearse it and review it and go over it and say, no, that's not exactly right. This is it. And when I come up with a final draft, it's very confirming. It gives me direction. And I write sort of kind of mild action plans. I'm not an anal list taker that I've got to do my check-off list, but I say these are some areas I need to focus on. Do you agree that when you're writing on these things, it helps you incorporate those internally much stronger?
100%. For some reason, I don't know the exact reasons and mechanics of it all, but somehow the hand is able to show the truth much more than just thinking about something, right? So even if many times I've used that technique, even if I need to figure out, a lot of times we don't really know what we feel even, right? Especially if we weren't taught well to label feelings and to know what they are, so we might even have confusion about what I feel. And so you can, whether you write it out or you draw a picture of yourself, like stick figures, how do I feel like? Just draw a picture of yourself, draw a picture of yourself with another person, and the hand somehow tells the truth much more. So I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of the body being more truthful, than our thinking mind.
You wrote on your website, there are a couple of things several things I really liked on your website, but there were a couple of quotes or statements that I really liked, and you put found early in your website. You put these words as a group leader and the originator and facilitator of the Courage Circle. You put, "Don't follow me, follow you," and which I really like. I think that's a bold statement. But I also like maybe if we even for people who are not your audience. Don't follow others, follow yourself. And we are, our culture, once I was told the data may be skewed. It just was sort of just roundabout numbers, but 5% of the people think, 15% of the people think they think, and 80% of the people would rather die than think. And I've always thought that was kind of cute. I don't know how true that is, but we are so much, we live in a culture, especially in the Western culture, of adopting. I don't want to have to think. I don't want to have to make a decision. Just tell me what I need to do and I can do it, and then life is easy. And you're saying, no, not if you want to live a meaningful life. You can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to live in peace and you want to live in power, well, you're going to have to take responsibility and find the way.
I agree. I think it is so essential. And the people that I know that have done this, and honestly, this is not, I don't know how you feel about this, but this is never going to catch on commonly. This is not the majority of the United States or the majority of Canada, because you're in Quebec. The majority of Canada is going to live this way. It's only a few of the percentage, but you were talking to, I don't want to make your audience sound grander than others, but you're talking to a more thoughtful, intellectual audience that's saying there's something missing. There's something missing to, our everyday common responses, and there needs to be something else going on in order to live a life that is full of meaning. So tell me, you have started with your book, The Creative Circle. You have started in a yoga studio in Montreal. Is that right?
Yeah.
A yoga studio in Montreal. You use this yoga studio, and you do these groups called Courage Circles. Tell me about that.
Well, after I published my book, I realized, there are so many pieces of the puzzle, for me anyways, that got me to a place of just kind of knowing how to live in a way. It doesn't mean nothing happens in my life, all kinds of things, but at least I have like a bit of a way that works. And it was many pieces of a puzzle. It was not like, oh, meditate 10 minutes a day, you're going to be fine. It didn't really work like that. It was just many, many pieces. And I had put them together for myself in the book. And I realized there's not many places that people discuss these topics, as a group. People don't do it at a dinner table. We don't learn it in school. We're not doing it anywhere. So I felt compelled to try to start a circle. And so since February, every week we meet, whoever shows up from the group that I have. Usually it's about 15 people.
Oh, really?
And we discuss, different people every time. Like the group is maybe 700 people signed up, but they don't all come, obviously. But about 15 come, 20, sometimes, depends on.
Well, that's a nice, you wouldn't want the audience any larger than that.
No, that's actually the maximum.
Yeah.
And then we sit around and we discuss a different topic, but we do so with respect and with kindness and with understanding. And so there isn't, controlling behavior, demeaning behavior, judging or cutting people off if they're expressing themselves, like, all kinds of things that are supposedly normal in our society. In our circle, we allow each person to just express, where they're at or their view, and that's theirs. It's not.
So you set ground rules to begin with.
I don't set it, no, not officially I don't. It's just interesting how it ends up being that way. I mean, but there's a couple of things I do that maybe help that happen. I do, after we introduce ourselves, I invite everybody to let go of, all their titles and degrees and all that. And I'm actually a lawyer from a prestigious law school, so I let go of mine. So I think that encourages other people to not see themselves as their
just a person.
And titles.
I'm just a person, not a title.
For this hour, let's just talk to each other, from our hearts or humans or spirits, whatever word feels right for you. And so that kind of puts everybody on an equal footing, right? Regardless of their age and race and titles and anything else. So I think that's just felt in the room. And then I do a quick listening description. So
if I may, I want to interject one thing that I use, and then I want to hear about listening. I'm very interested in listening, but I used to facilitate business groups quite a bit, high-level board kind of groups getting together, and we had to have some kind of ground rules because they were warring factors. And so, I mean, just not warring, but disagreeing. And my job was conflict resolution, which was an interesting job. But you know what I used to ask Sandy before every meeting? And, there would be ground rules. What does everybody agree they need to do? And blah, blah, blah. And so you'd have all these cute, aphorisms of these are the things we do. But the question I asked instead, Sandy, I said, okay, what could each one of us in this room do to guarantee this session is a total failure? And they said, well, we could interrupt, we could nothing, and so they would, so they really, you get into the negative and people speak about the negative. And then we just said, well, we just established our ground rules. We won't overtalk. We won't judge. We won't do this. And it's just like they set it up, and it's very cool. It's not coming from an outsider. It's coming from inside. But anyway, that was just a trick that I learned years ago. But now tell me about listening, because I know listening is very important to you.
Yeah, for me, it's maybe everything. I don't know. It's probably most of everything. I don't think. I mean, people use the word like, okay, listen, blah blah. They use it lightly, but for me, it has a lot more power than that. So, for listening, I do a quick role play, and I ask somebody to share something in the group just to get it started. And someone will share something, and then I give examples of how different types of listening look like. So the first I'll say, what dismissiveness and gaslighting looks like, and I'll demonstrate it. Then I'll talk about fixing people and trying to fix what they say, giving them advice that they didn't ask for, or trying to feel superior. So literally play them all out. And then the third one, which is the true listening, where you just act as a clean human mirror and reflect the truth, basically. So if somebody shares something, this is true. Truth. They're saying, I'm feeling worried about whatever. That's just truth. There's nothing more to it than truth. And so I find it very important. It's not even a question of kindness, but a question of being in reality, to allow a person to speak and for everyone to allow the truth to exist for a moment, and not try to switch it and fix it and change it and ignore it or anything else. Just let it for a moment, and then it doesn't mean people are not going to make choices or do something else, but just being in reality is very hard these days, because every time you express reality, which includes what you feel, that is reality. Right? It's not just the tree outside that's real, but what we feel is 100% real. And so when you allow a person to examine their own current reality, so when we do this listening practice, it sets the tone, and then after that, everyone who speaks, I guess they just understand that in this room we're not doing those other weird things, and we're allowing reality to be in the room.
Yeah.
And once you do that, people are they open instantly. They share, they encourage, they're kind. Like, it's
because instant, they're being heard
by listening. Yeah, just
they're being heard,
being allowed to exist.
We have in my mind there are several, but two problems come to my mind right away, and that is when listening to other people, we have this tendency to want to fix, and we are just not in position to fix. We don't know the situation. We don't know the people. We're just saying what I would do if I were in that situation under my circumstance, which is totally different than yours. So we have the need to fix. But another need that I find when we're talking about a difficulty, how many times have other people, and have I even tried to outdo their problem? Oh, you think you had a problem? Let me tell you about
Let's
mine.
get back about you.
Oh, wait a minute. This is nuts.
Yeah.
You're precisely right.
I've done them all. Yeah, I've done everything. Otherwise, I wouldn't know and understand them now. So. Right? So, yeah, I mean, that's another one. Making everything about you when someone else speaks. Or, as you mentioned, like trying to fix the other person right away. I think for me, that's one of the main reasons people walk around feeling something's wrong with them, because there's a constant response of trying to fix your feelings or fix what you're thinking. And usually it has to do with the person fixing, right? It means they can't handle watching someone, have some difficulty, or they can't handle feelings or something like that, right? So.
Well, I'll tell you, Sandy, you have some really very cool insights into this, and I am going to I've got it in our show notes already, and I'm going to highly recommend people pick up your book, because I think it can be very helpful. And when you wrote the book, you called it sanity notes. That these were things that were just occurring to you in the process.
Yeah, I was just trying to organize my own life and, putting pieces together and getting organized. And the puzzles came together for me, and now I feel, happy to share that, whether it's in my courage circles or as people pick up the book. I just wish I had something to read that was so, and I'm not trying to say that my book is the best or amazing. I mean, many people have a lot of similar things to say in that book, but it would be nice to have somebody say things related to courage, and to realize that a lot of these things, like, we really, really get wrong messages, and that's why we're not feeling okay. So that's a test to ask yourself, like, whenever you listen to someone, are they in peace or not? Like, are they living in peace? And if not, then maybe it's not the best guide, right?
I love peace and courage. It's the courage to be true to yourself. And when you do that, even though all circumstances may turn out exactly like what you want, but you have peace because you know you've been authentic. You've been true to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Sandy Stream, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for doing this as well.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it. So hang on, and we'll check out with you after the show just to make sure everything's cool. You are a wonderful guest. Thanks again.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. You're a wonderful host.
Thank you. And I also want to thank all our listeners for tuning in to the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.